I had always believed in family. That unspoken bond, that invisible thread tying us together through every fight, every failure, every late-night brainstorming session in the office that smelled of burnt coffee and ambition. But that night, in the glass-walled conference room overlooking the city lights, I realized how fragile that bond really was. How easily it could snap. And when it did, it left me staring into the hollow eyes of betrayal. The day had started like any other. Our tech startup, Lumos Innovations, was booming, a multi-million-dollar empire we had built from the ground up with my parents before they retired. I had poured myself into it for years, sacrificing weekends, friendships, even dates, all for the chance to one day step into the CEO role. And tonight, I was supposed to pitch the latest product rollout to the board, my chance to finally solidify that path. I walked into the office after a long dinner meeting with a potential investor, my laptop bag slung over my shoulder, my heels clicking against the polished concrete floors. The city lights reflected off the skyscrapers, neon blues and purples painting the glass walls. I took a deep breath, readying myself for the presentation that could finally cement my future. And there he was. My brother, Adrian, charming, polished, every bit the golden boy our parents always seemed to favor. He was leaning casually against the conference table, his phone in hand, that easy grin plastered on his face that I had always loved, until that smile became something else entirely. "Phoebe," he said, voice smooth, magnetic. "You're late." "I had a meeting with Klein and Company," I replied, setting my bag down and straightening my blazer. "You know how important this investor is." He shrugged, still smiling, but there was a glint in his eye I hadn't noticed before, a calculating edge. "Of course. Just make sure you don't trip over the board's expectations. They tend to favor confidence." Confidence. Right. I had it. I had worked for it. And yet, in that moment, I felt an unfamiliar chill crawl up my spine. Something about the way he said it. Too casual, too knowing. I set up my laptop, clicked through the slides, and tried to ignore the growing pit in my stomach. Adrian watched silently, leaning back in his chair, pretending to scroll through emails, but sneaking glances at me every few seconds. I brushed it off. He always liked to test me, tease me, but it was harmless. Or so I thought. Halfway through my presentation, my screen flickered and I frowned. That was strange. A technical glitch in the middle of a pitch could ruin everything. I clicked, restarted, and that's when I noticed it. The files I had prepared, some of the core slides were replaced. Graphs showing projected revenue were altered. Notes I had painstakingly written were missing, replaced by someone else's handwriting, someone familiar. I froze, heart hammering. Adrian's grin widened just slightly, almost imperceptibly. "What's wrong?" he asked, leaning over casually. "Computer acting up?" I clenched my jaw. "No, it's just a glitch, I guess." My voice was steadier than I felt. But deep down, a fire was igniting, a mix of disbelief and rage. After the meeting, when I returned to my office, I pulled up the company's internal records. And that's when the truth hit me like a fist to the chest. Emails I had never sent. Contracts I had never signed. Board memos with my name, yes, but decisions I never authorized, all signed by Adrian. He had gone behind my back, manipulated the board, and essentially handed himself the leverage he needed to claim the CEO position. Every late-night strategy session, every sleepless night I had poured into Lumos, he had watched and waited, charming everyone in sight while quietly carving a path straight over me. I sank into my chair, hands trembling. The city lights outside blurred as tears stung my eyes. How could someone so close, someone I had loved and trusted my entire life, do this to me? How could he look at me with that perfect, magnetic smile, knowing the devastation he had caused? I thought back to every time we had fought over small things, trivial disagreements about office layout, marketing strategy, or who had the better vision for Lumos. I had laughed them off, called him a brat, never imagining the depth of his ambition, the lengths he would go to satisfy it. And now, the realization cut deeper than any insult or failure ever could. This wasn't about business. This was about him, about Adrian proving that he could win, no matter who got hurt. No matter that it was me. I slammed my laptop shut. The sound echoed through the empty office like a judge's gavel. Rage, disbelief, and sorrow tangled together inside me, but beneath it all, a spark of resolve lit up. I would not crumble. I could not. Lumos Innovations was my family's legacy, yes, but it was also mine. And Adrian had just shown me the stakes. I rose from my chair, my reflection in the glass staring back at me fierce, determined, and quietly furious. "You think you've won," I whispered to the empty room, "but this is only the beginning." That night, I lay awake in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction, every smile, every conversation I had with him over the years. I cataloged every slight, every hidden agenda, every manipulation. And slowly, methodically, I began to craft a plan. Not reckless, not impulsive. Strategic. Precise. Just like the game of chess he thought he was winning. Because if Adrian wanted the CEO seat, if he wanted to claim the empire my parents and I had built, he would have to go through me. And for the first time that night, I realized something chilling. I was ready to fight back. Morning light spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my apartment, painting the room in soft gold. I hadn't slept much. My mind was a carousel of numbers, emails, and memories, all spinning around one central fact: Adrian had betrayed me. And yet, despite the chaos in my chest, I felt a strange clarity. Today, I would begin to reclaim my world. I brewed a strong cup of coffee and sat by the window, staring at the city skyline. Lumos Innovations looked like a jewel from up here, the headquarters gleaming with all the success and ambition I had poured my life into. And yet, down there, my brother roamed freely, smiling at board members, charming investors, acting as if he hadn't just tried to steal everything I had worked for. I allowed myself a moment of reflection. Adrian had always been ambitious, always smart, always magnetic. Growing up, he was the golden child. Everything he did seemed effortless. Parents favored him, teachers praised him, friends adored him. And me? I had always been the quiet one, diligent, careful, patient. I had believed hard work and integrity would carry me to the top. But life, as I was learning, didn't care about virtue. It cared about power. And Adrian. Adrian knew exactly how to wield it. I opened my laptop and began reviewing every detail of the previous night's revelation. Emails, contracts, board memos, each one a thread of evidence tying him to the betrayal. I printed them, highlighting his moves, the subtle manipulations, and the moments when he had exploited my trust. It was methodical work, tedious, but necessary. Every chess master knows that preparation wins the game long before the first piece moves. Then came the calls, advisors, mentors, friends who knew my work ethic, my vision for Lumos, my capabilities as the rightful heir to the CEO role. They all offered words of encouragement, but beneath their polite reassurances, I could hear the unspoken question: could I take him down without destroying the company or our family in the process? I didn't answer them. I had no time for doubt. By late morning, I arrived at Lumos Innovations, the familiar hum of servers and chatter of engineers greeting me like a battlefield waiting to be claimed. Adrian was there, of course, pretending to type on his laptop, casual, charming, every bit the golden boy again. I forced a polite smile, nodding at him. "Morning, Phoebe," he said smoothly, eyes glinting with amusement. "Rough night." I ignored the jab, walking past him toward my office. I didn't need his validation. I needed to understand him, to predict his next move. The calm before the storm, as they say, is the time to observe, plan, and sharpen your weapons. My weapon was knowledge and patience. I called in a few trusted colleagues, those who had always supported my vision without question. Together, we began reviewing current projects, financials, and board sentiments. Every detail mattered. Every alliance had to be remembered. Adrian might be charming, but he had underestimated the quiet ones, the careful planners, the ones who worked behind the scenes instead of basking in the spotlight. As the day unfolded, I allowed myself brief moments of reflection. Adrian and I had once shared dreams of revolutionizing the tech world, building Lumos into something more than a company, a legacy. We had laughed over late-night brainstorming sessions, argued over the best UX design, and celebrated every minor win as if it were a monumental victory. And now all of it felt poisoned. The bond we shared, twisted into a battlefield where only one of us could survive. The office was quieter than usual that morning, the hum of servers and tapping of keyboards subdued, almost hesitant. I had sensed it all along, the tension, the whispers behind closed doors, the sideways glances that weren't meant to reach me. Adrian had been charming, manipulating, and persuasive, but now I could see the ripples of his deception everywhere. I started where all truths hide, the details. Every board email, every contract revision, every offhand remark he'd made over the past 6 months, I combed through them like a detective searching for fingerprints. And what I found made my stomach turn. Every decision I had championed, every proposal I had carefully drafted for Lumos's next major investment, had been quietly redirected under his name. Clients were convinced he had led the initiatives, board members lauded him for vision he had stolen, and the media, always hungry for the next tech story, painted him as the rising star. And me? I was the quiet sister who lacked initiative, was too cautious, simply couldn't handle the weight of leadership. I sank into my chair, hands pressed over my face. How many times had I confided in him, trusted him, shared my ideas, my vision, my dreams? And he had taken all of it, polished it with charm, and presented it as his own. But the worst betrayal wasn't the theft of ideas. It was the lies he told about me to our parents. I had always assumed they would see me, really see me, for the work I had done, for the long nights, the early mornings, the sacrifices. But Adrian, with his practiced smile and silver tongue, had convinced them I was reckless, careless, and unprepared. They had begun questioning me subtly, sending me emails that dripped with concern. Are you sure you're ready for this? Have you considered taking a step back? I felt rage spike, bitter and hot. Not the childish anger of a fight over a toy, but a deep, gnawing fury, the kind that comes when someone you love corrupts every memory you shared, when they twist truth and perception until your own family can no longer recognize you. I remembered the conversations I had had with investors, friends, and employees, all of them praising Adrian's leadership, his confidence, his brilliance, while ignoring my own contributions. I had thought my work would speak for itself. That integrity would always be its own currency. But Adrian had proven, with cruel precision, that perception was everything. And now I was the one left questioning my own worth. I clenched my fists, pressing them into the wood of my desk. This wasn't just about business anymore. It was personal. Every email, every manipulated contract, every whispered doubt planted in the minds of those I loved, it was all a battlefront, and I had been blindsided. I needed allies, I realized. People who knew the truth, who had seen my work firsthand, who had not been swayed by Adrian's charm. I called in Lena, the lead engineer, a brilliant mind who had been with Lumos from the beginning, and Malik, our CFO, a man of numbers and integrity. I laid out everything I had uncovered, the falsified approvals, the misrepresented proposals, the board memos. Their faces shifted from surprise to anger to determination. You're right, Lena said finally, her voice low and steady. He's been rewriting history. And he's good at it. Malik nodded. But he's left traces. There's always a trail. We just need to follow it, document it. If we play it smart, the board will have no choice but to see the truth. I felt a flicker of hope. Not yet victory, but a foothold. Adrian had underestimated me, assumed I would crumble beneath the betrayal, let him sweep everything under the rug with charm and swagger. He hadn't counted on the quiet ones, the careful planners, the ones who understood that strategy beats performance when patience is applied. That night, I confronted Adrian, not with accusation, not with anger, but with calm observation. I needed to see how he reacted, how he would mask his guilt, if guilt existed at all. He smiled when I approached him in the empty conference room, his charm effortless. Phoebe, he said, leaning casually against the table. Burning the midnight oil? I stood tall, meeting his eyes evenly. I've been reviewing the board's records, I said, my voice measured, steady. Interesting how some of the initiatives I led are suddenly attributed to you. I'm curious. Do you remember sending those approvals on my behalf? He tilted his head, pretending to think. I don't recall. Maybe it's a mix-up? You know how busy things get. I could feel the smirk behind his words, the practiced deflection. He thought he could charm me. I let him believe it. Let him relax. For now. Interesting, I said softly, taking a step closer. Because I have emails. Signed contracts. And board memos with your handwriting. Looks like you've been very proactive. His eyes flickered, just for a moment. The slightest crack in the facade. And in that moment, I knew this was far from over. Walking away, I felt the weight of the battle settle on my shoulders. Adrian had weaponized our family's trust, our legacy, and even our parents' perceptions. But I was no longer naive. I had seen the lies, traced them back to him, and understood the depth of his manipulation. The calm before the storm was over. The storm itself was coming. And I was ready. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was tossing and turning, but because my mind wouldn't allow it. Every move Adrian had made, every smile he had used to manipulate, every whispered lie had been catalogued in my memory. I wasn't angry in the reckless way people lose themselves in fury. I was focused. Cold. Calculating. Strategic. By sunrise, I had made my decision. I would not allow my brother, my own blood, to steal the legacy our parents had built. I would not let him walk into the CEO office, wearing charm like armor while my name became a footnote in the story we had built together. I called Lena and Malik to a quiet conference room. The soft hum of the city outside seemed distant, almost irrelevant, compared to the storm brewing inside me. We're moving, I said, laying out a folder of evidence on the table, emails, memos, contracts, and board meeting notes. We have the proof. We know what he's done. And now we're going to make sure the board sees it. Every step, every signature, every manipulated project, all of it will be exposed. Lena leaned forward, fingers tapping the table. This isn't just exposing him, Phoebe. We're talking about family. The fallout could be catastrophic. I know, I said softly, eyes fixed on the skyline beyond the glass. But if we don't act, he takes everything. And if he takes everything, nothing we've built will mean anything, not for us, not for our parents, not for the company. I won't let him do that. Not anymore. Malik nodded, eyes sharp and steady. Then it's a matter of timing. We wait for the right moment when the board is most receptive, when the evidence can't be dismissed. And we move decisively. I felt a flicker of exhilaration, a spark of power I hadn't realized I possessed. This wasn't just revenge. This was reclamation. It was taking back control, asserting my worth, proving that no one, not even blood, could undermine me without consequence. The next few days became a flurry of quiet preparation. I reviewed every project Adrian had touched, every contract he had signed under false pretenses. I scheduled meetings with board members, subtly probing their opinions, gauging their loyalty, understanding their vulnerabilities. I trained my mind like an athlete preparing for the finals, focused, relentless, and precise. And all the while, Adrian carried on with his charming facade, oblivious to the quiet war unfolding around him. He didn't see me as a threat because he had underestimated the quiet sister in his shadow. And that would be his first mistake. Late one evening, I found myself alone in the office, staring at the empty conference room where so many of our battles had begun. I thought about every late night Adrian and I had spent together, brainstorming ideas, arguing about strategy, dreaming about the future. Those memories twisted in my chest like a knife. I had trusted him completely, had shared every idea, every hope, every fear, and he had used it all as a weapon against me. And yet, beneath the sting of betrayal, I felt clarity. Betrayal had a way of sharpening the senses, of illuminating weaknesses and opportunities. Adrian had revealed himself fully, without realizing he was showing me the path to victory. His charm, his manipulations, his overconfidence, they were all predictable patterns now. All I had to do was play the game, but on my terms. The moment I chose to rise wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a grand speech or a tearful vow. It was quiet, almost invisible. I looked at my reflection in the glass wall, saw my own eyes staring back, resolute, determined, and unyielding. I whispered to myself, "This is mine. I will take it back. And I will do it right." That night, I drafted the first phase of my plan: gather undeniable evidence, secure allies within the board, and create a scenario where Adrian's manipulations could no longer hide in the shadows. Every move had to be calculated, every word precise. The CEO seat wasn't just a title, it was power. And Adrian had shown me that power could corrupt even the closest bonds. I left the office as the city slept, the skyline ablaze with lights that mirrored my own burning resolve. For the first time since discovering his betrayal, I felt a quiet thrill. The game had begun. And this time, I would be the one moving the pieces. By the time I returned home, I knew something fundamental had shifted. I was no longer the sister who had been blindsided. I was Phoebe, strategist, warrior, heir to an empire. And Adrian. Adrian was about to find out that charm and manipulation could only take him so far when faced with determination and truth. The calm before the storm was gone. The storm itself was here. And I was ready to meet it head-on. The boardroom was silent, the only sound the faint hum of the air conditioning and the quiet rustle of papers. The city stretched beyond the glass walls, unaware that tonight, inside these walls, family and legacy were about to collide. I stepped in, calm, composed, and resolute. This was it, the moment I had been preparing for. Adrian was already there, leaning casually against the table, that practiced smile on his face that I had once trusted. He looked confident, untouchable, like he always did when he thought the world was in his pocket. "Phoebe," he said smoothly, his charm on full display. "Right on time. Are you ready to present your case?" I smiled, a controlled, quiet smile that masked the fire beneath. "Yes, Adrian. I think it's time everyone saw the truth." I laid out the evidence I had gathered, contracts he had forged, emails he had sent under my name, manipulated board votes, and even internal memos highlighting projects he had falsely claimed. Each document, each email, each signature was presented clearly, fact by fact, leaving no room for charm to mask deception. The board members shifted in their seats, surprise and disbelief flickering across their faces. Adrian's eyes narrowed, but his smile never faltered. He tried to charm them, to deflect, to twist the narrative as he always had. But this time, I was prepared. Every word, every argument he made, I countered with evidence. Every smirk, every attempt at persuasion, I met with calm precision. "You've underestimated me for too long," I said, my voice steady, carrying through the room. "You thought charm could replace integrity. You thought manipulation could replace work ethic. But the truth doesn't lie in appearances. It lies in actions. And your actions have been clear for everyone to see." Adrian's smile faltered, just for a moment, before he tried to recover. "Phoebe, you're being dramatic. Surely you're not accusing me." "Not accusing," I interrupted, placing a document in front of the board chair. "Proving. Here is the timeline, the signatures, the internal communications. Every project you took credit for, every decision you misrepresented, it's all here. And the board needs to decide who has truly earned the right to lead Lumos innovations." A tense silence filled the room. I could feel the weight of history, family, and ambition pressing down on us. Adrian's eyes flashed with anger, frustration, disbelief. He had always believed he could manipulate perception, that his charm could shield him from accountability. But tonight, the armor had been stripped away. One by one, the board members spoke, referencing the evidence, asking questions, acknowledging facts. Adrian stumbled, charm failing him, as the truth weaved a cage around him. The sibling I had once loved and trusted, the one whose smile had been my comfort, was now exposed, not as a villain, but as a man whose ambition had crossed moral and familial boundaries. When the final vote was cast, I felt a quiet relief wash over me. I had not humiliated him. I had not sought revenge for the sake of spite. I had sought justice for myself, for the company, and for the legacy we were meant to uphold. "You've done well," Adrian said finally, voice low, tight, stripped of the easy charm that had always been his shield. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, only the sting of defeat. I nodded, feeling a complex tangle of emotions. Sadness, yes. Disappointment, absolutely. But also pride, determination, and a strange sense of liberation. The battle had been won, but the war within my own heart, the reconciliation of love and betrayal, was still ongoing. As I walked out of the boardroom, the city lights glittering around me, I felt a quiet exhilaration. I had faced the betrayal of my own blood, confronted it with clarity and resolve, and emerged stronger. The storm had passed, leaving the air crisp, clean, and full of possibility. For the first time since discovering Adrian's deception, I felt free. Free to lead. Free to reclaim my legacy. Free to be Phoebe, not the quiet sister, not the overlooked daughter, not the one underestimated, but the woman who could rise, strategize, and reclaim what was rightfully hers. Adrian would recover, of course. He was clever, resilient, and relentless. But I had seen the cracks. I had found the truth. And in the world of ambition, power, and legacy, that truth was everything. It's strange how quiet victory can be. There's no thunder, no applause, no cinematic explosion of joy. Just silence, the kind that lets you hear your own breathing, your own heartbeat, the faint hum of life moving on. It's been 3 months since that day in the boardroom. The world didn't end, though for a while, it had felt like mine might. The company stabilized faster than I expected. Investors regained confidence. Our team started trusting leadership again. For the first time in months, Lumos Innovations felt like a company that stood for something real, not manipulation, not ego, but purpose. And me? I learned that rebuilding doesn't start with revenge. It starts with restraint. With choosing calm when chaos would be easier. With remembering who you are when the people closest to you try to rewrite your story. I see Adrian sometimes, across meetings, family gatherings, or in fleeting memories that surface when I least expect them. He's quieter now, more guarded. The charm is still there, but it's thinner, like the surface of glass that's been cracked and mended. We don't talk much. The bond we had is no longer what it was. But I've stopped wishing for things to return to how they used to be. Some relationships are meant to evolve, and some are meant to teach. One evening, I stood by the same glass wall in the office where everything began, where I first discovered the betrayal, where I first decided to fight back. The skyline shimmered in gold, reflecting the dusk light across the city. It reminded me of the first time Adrian and I had dreamed of building something great together. And for the first time, I didn't feel pain. I felt gratitude for the lessons, for the scars, for the strength I never knew I had. There's something deeply liberating about surviving betrayal. You stop expecting people to save you. You stop waiting for closure from others. You start becoming your own calm after the storm. When the board officially announced my position as CEO, I didn't celebrate with champagne or speeches. I went home, took off my heels, and sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the city lights flicker like constellations. I thought of my parents, of the legacy they built, and of the promise I had once made to them to protect what they created. And I realized I had done it. Not perfectly, not painlessly, but truthfully. That night, I opened my journal and wrote, I learned that blood may betray, but purpose never does. And when you fight not for power, but for peace, that's when you truly win. The company continues to thrive, and I've built a culture where truth isn't silenced, where loyalty is earned, not expected. My story isn't about revenge anymore, it's about renewal. About understanding that redemption doesn't always come from apologies, sometimes it comes from becoming who you were meant to be all along. Adrian once told me, you'll never survive this world if you keep leading with emotion. He was wrong. It wasn't emotion that destroyed me, it was what saved me. Compassion kept me grounded. Integrity kept me steady. And courage became my weapon. Now, when I look at my reflection in the glass wall of the top-floor office, I no longer see the sister who was betrayed. I see the woman who rose not in spite of the fire, but because of it. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I feel peace. Real, unshakable peace. The kind that doesn't need to be announced. The kind that simply is. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs strength tonight. Subscribe for more stories of courage, redemption, and truth. because healing doesn't end with pain, it begins with power.